Hello and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, where we help dads navigate through their life during and after divorce to create an amazing life for themselves and their children. I'm Jude Sandoval. I am your host, and I am very excited to introduce today Sandra Wood, who is a divorce coach for women. Yes, she through her program, teaches women how to navigate through relationship breakups and divorce so that they can own their power to create a life of their own making. And Sandra, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So one of the things that caught my attention immediately was that your mission statement is almost identical as our mission statement here on the Divorced Advocate, which is really fantastic. Just the flip side for women.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, really, the path is pretty much the same, just different elements of how we deal with things from a female to male perspective.
Absolutely. And so that is, we talked a little bit about that, and we had a really great conversation around that. And we probably could have kept talking for hours. And I promise the listeners out there today, we won't be talking for an hour or hours today, but one of the things we started to talk about and that I talk about a lot on our show, and was the impetus around developing the program that I have for divorced fathers, was that men experience divorce differently than women. And so that's obviously what I'd like to start with, is just talking a little bit about what you've experienced with your clients, and how women are experiencing divorce. And we can kind of maybe just trade, share notes on that and how that works, so that we can help to give a perspective. Because for my listeners, we're going to be, we're divorced fathers primarily, and we're still going to be co-parenting with this individual. So I feel like it's important for us to have some idea, some perspective around what it is that they may be experiencing, because that can help in, mitigating a lot of things.
Yes.
Would you agree?
I would agree for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit about how you feel with how women experience divorce, and then maybe I can share with how we do, and then let's talk
kind of go back and forth a little bit here. Yeah. I think for a lot of women, they kind of come out of divorce sort of acknowledging that it was a codependent relationship. And so really kind of understanding the layers to, what they gave and what they received. And I think there's a real big disconnect between men and women often in this arena. And what I see with women is often women come out of divorce going into a support system. And I'm curious to see, do men do that as well?
Yes, I think that is one of the greatest challenges for men, is that they don't have a very strong support system. And I just had somebody recently say to me, Jude, I suffered in silence for 2 years. And that is, and it's a challenge. And it's also a challenge to get men to reach out to acquire that, to acquire that support, or find that support, whether that's just simply a meetup group, or if you have the means to hire a coach or a therapist, or just finding a friend. So yes, I would agree with you that from a male perspective, a lot of times there's a lot of loneliness and sadness and isolation in this situation. But it's pleasing to hear and know that you find that women really do surround themselves, because that's an important component in getting through the process.
Yeah. And, I think that, I started a support group last night with 7 new women. And I was just kind of blown away at how easy it is for women to just say their story and kind of go right into the pain of it. And I was thinking about our talk today, wondering, would men do that? I just feel like men that isn't what they're trained to do to get support. And so it was just interesting last night to really observe how easy it is for women just to kind of bring about the pain. And then, I think a lot of times what is helpful, I think it was helpful for both men and women, is to realize you're not alone. And also, I think people label themselves as I'm crazy because this didn't work, so there must be something wrong with me. And a lot of women come out of marriages thinking that they're broken. And I would suspect that men might think that too. But I don't know if there's a system that helps them really kind of go through that process.
I agree with you on that. I think there's a commonality in maybe in general, maybe this is less of a masculine feminine thing as it is a societal thing that we feel like, wow, this is the only thing going through my mind, or this is only happening to me. And I don't necessarily have an understanding as to why that is, other than that we get trapped in our own heads sometimes and don't have maybe the connection that we had in the past to relatives or a close community, or maybe that could be a religious community or somebody that's really, we're talking about and bouncing these things off of, so that we don't feel like we are in isolation or that we are crazy and this is the only thing, or that we're broken or that there's a problem or anything else, because there's not. And one of the things that was huge for me in growing and healing was having that realization, but that was by going through groups, like being involved in groups and talking, first listening, right? Because like you said, it was difficult and challenging to share those feelings, let those feelings and emotions come up. For me, and a lot of men experience that, is to just to be stoic. And being stoic is a very good, very positive thing to have as a masculine attribute, until it becomes a behavior that is repressive to something that could otherwise be helpful. Right. So it was first being able to listen and then say, oh my God, like I'm not the only person going through this. And that's one of the things I emphasize all the time on this show is you're not alone. There's other men. And so when they get into that group, and like we do a meetup, and they hear other men talking about the same things or the same experiences, and I still have this, like I'm 8.5 years down the road with my divorce. And just last week, I'm like, oh man, you're going through that. I'm going through that right now with my ex. Right. And it's like, cause we're still, we're still involved in some of this stuff. So I think that's a fantastic point.
Well, and I also think too that, what is good support for somebody going through divorce? Because a lot of times your community or your family is not helpful. They have opinions, they might be very protective of you. So they might be angry. And that's not helpful if you're trying to process, what happened and, what's your responsibility in that relationship. And, some of the women last night were talking about how when they try to talk to their female friends, they don't really want to talk about it because these are really deep things. And you might be tapping into somebody else's marriage that might not be working. And, so I think it's important for both men and women to really do an assessment of who is helpful to you. And that might need to be a therapist or a coach or somebody who isn't fighting, the family battles for you or isn't overly invested in, what's going on with your situation. Because I found that I felt kind of abandoned by my friends and family for a while, as I kind of started to understand that they were dealing with my divorce too.
Right.
Not just me. So I had to give space for that to realize that, I couldn't count on them in those ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I wish that I had invested in more therapy or coaching early on. It would have helped me see some of those blind spots. And exactly to your point, and God bless him, I had a good friend who was there had just been through a divorce, and it was great to be able to bounce things off of him. But he had some of the most terrible advice for me. And looking back, I'm going, oh, I should have never, ever done that, or I should never listen to him. And, well-intentioned, but it would have served me much better. Ill-advised, right? It would have served me much better to, to be in the therapy or in the coaching. And I think that's one of the things now that I love being able to do, is to share that with other men and say, okay, look, here's the, I've got a program. I know that you've got a program that you go and you take women through. And so this is like a systematic way for us to go through this. And so let's talk a little bit about that, because so for men, it's a very chaotic time, and our masculine natures just does not, we prefer order, right?
Yes, exactly.
Logical. And so this is like, oh man, very, very challenging, which isn't a bad thing, because during challenging times you can have some of your best growth. And so what I encourage is going through a systematic process of creating vision, et cetera. Take us a little bit through the kind of the process and maybe the mindset of how women might go about this. And then maybe we can see where there's like, how there can be some conflict, right? Because there seems to be some conflict in the divorces. Right?
There's always a lot of conflict, a lot of anger. Right. I think, probably a lot of it's very similar. It's just really like, where are you at now? Like starting there, like what's the biggest challenge that you're having? And then also, what do you want? Like, what do you want to see 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years? Because really for me, I believe divorce is a 2-year process minimally, to really end in a place where you feel like, okay, I'm back on my feet again. So it's really just trying to help identify what is the wish here. And then I know, it'd be interesting to see if men identify this, but a lot of women come out and say, I don't know who I am. My identity was all around my marriage and my children and my family. And, some women have careers, some women stayed home. So it's really just kind of reassessing, who am I? What do I like? What do I want? Those are like some of the first steps that we go through. And then identifying grief, because it's a grief process. Even if it was mutual and, that it's not high contention, there's still a grief process. So it's really acknowledging that piece and giving that space. And I'm not sure that men understand that or do that as well. So I'm curious to see, how do you start out in your program with men?
So I feel like men are less confused about who they are and more confused about what happened. Yeah, exactly. Or where was it, and what did what did or didn't I do incorrectly, and trying to assess, because oftentimes they're completely blindsided. This is like,
out of the blue.
I had no idea, and I had no idea, and and that's what turns it upside down and chaotic and soul searching. So part of what we do immediately in the rebuilding part is taking that self-assessment and really learning to understand who you are, what your behaviors were. And I think we chatted a little bit about this, about behaviors, and I've talked about this. I just talked about this last week on our show about behaviors that you learn as a child that helped, that were adaptive, that helped you to survive your childhood. Because even with the best parents you possibly have, that there's some needs that are not going to be met, and then you figure out a way to deal with that. Right. Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about how amazing human beings and we are as a species, is that we can adapt. We adapt to anything. And even in the most terrible, awful childhood situations, we adapt and we figure it out. Now, the challenge is when we take those adaptive behaviors into our adulthood, into our relationships, they then become maladaptive behaviors, and they don't serve us to be in a healthy, happy, fulfilling relationship going forward. And
Yeah.
so that first part of the program that I work with men is, okay, let's identify what our responsibility was in this, because they're just like, oh my God, I had no idea. I didn't know what was going on. And then that helps them to really understand. And I think that gives men at least some logical understanding if they can figure out what it was that was their problem. And oftentimes, sometimes if they're even in the middle of in the divorce or just in the process, that opens up an opportunity for dialogue and conversation, and maybe even therapy for some couples to get back and see that there's this cycle that's not necessarily their fault,
right?
That they're trying to figure out. So I think,
wow,
yeah, that's interesting because it's coming from a perspective. So I would assume, and maybe you can talk about this with women, then the process that they have to go through in order to understand who they are.
Yeah. I think you just said a great point, which is a huge aha moment for me. Is I think women are very clear about what happened.
Okay.
And so I think that they're kind of coming out as to understanding some of the behaviors or the patterns, and also, how they played into that, because, women are taught to nurture everyone, to take care of everyone, to kind of do that at self-sacrifice a bit. And so women kind of come out realizing that that was part of the downfall of the marriage. And so they're much more clear about the dynamics that were happening in their relationship, and I feel a lot of women think that they've been very clear about what needed to happen, but it didn't click for the man in their life. It just didn't click. And it has felt like there would be attempts to try to shift that dynamic, but those weren't sustainable. And so I think you really dialed in on there's got to be another layer for men to understand those patterns and adapting that they've done in the past to get through difficult situations. So yeah,
and then it's incumbent upon the two to figure out how to communicate that stuff.
Yes,
and that is where I see there's a huge breakdown in general in our society right now in being able to figure out how to do that, to come together. And because until now it was simply, in general in society, men and women, and so I want to preface this by saying that men and women over the millennium have figured out how to get along, right?
And love each other.
And love each other and have families, and just but it was based upon just surviving, right? We didn't until the last century, or even less half century, life was very, very challenging. It was, you were just trying to survive, feed your kids, keep them alive, keep yourselves alive, and like get into old age. And then that was like an accomplishment,
goal.
Right? So now we've got a lot more time to think about a lot more things. Right? Who's doing the dishes, who's making enough money, all of this stuff, which is, when you really think about it, like a comfortable place to be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a good place to be for men and women, and reframing that, I feel, is a better conversation to have than some of the conversation that we're having right now, which is men are bad, or women are manipulative, or whatever brand or box you want to comfortably try to put people in. It's really more about communicating what it is that may be the needs or the boundaries or whatever it is on both ends, and do that effectively.
Yeah. Well, we have so much to learn from each other. And also, we have to shift within ourselves to be able to make relationships work. And it doesn't mean you have to sacrifice yourself or I think the better we get at boundary management, both men and women, the clearer we are with each other in saying, that didn't fly for me, or, hey, I need you to hear my perspective about this, and really work on that piece. And I've had the opportunity to be doing that with my second love of my life. And it's been a huge learning process for me, because he's very, very in touch with, his process of going through divorce as well, and communication. So that's been really beneficial. So to me, the crux of all of this is boundary management and learning new non-violent communication styles. Yeah.
NBC, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, and I think that you made a good point about your husband now is the misconception is that men don't care about this, or that men will just go on from divorce and they're going to go and they're going to get laid the next time, and then it's all going to be better, and they just go and that is absolutely the furthest thing from the truth, because this is probably, if not the greatest, most challenging thing that men face in their life. And that's been researched and I think that's on both sides too. It's one of the most difficult and challenging things to face in life. And so you also said something about that we need each other. And I think that is a great point too, because the masculine and the feminine have, working in conjunction together is like a positive thing, and we've gotten so far away. And I don't want to get into the details of why we speculate that we've diverged so far apart, or there's been this wedge placed or whatever. But let's talk about the positives of how the masculine and the feminine can be together, because you hear this, right? And so I don't ever hear, well, that I didn't ever want to be, it's always, I fell in love. I've been, I wanted to be in this relationship. It's never like that. They don't, we need each other. So, but how do we understand that masculine and feminine? What do you feel and what do you hear from women when they're in the process of divorce about that?
Yeah. Well, I just want to point out that men and women have both masculine and feminine. Yep. And there are many aspects of myself are way more masculine than my husband.
Sure.
And so I think that's really important for us, as both men and women, is just to kind of honor, what does that look like in myself? And then what does that look like within my relationship? There are definitely times where, where I'm looking for a little more soft, feminine approach to a problem that I'm having. And sometimes my husband will come at me with a solution, and we kind of have to negotiate that, and we just kind of have conversation of what hat do I want him to wear, and what hat does he want me to wear. Sometimes he just wants that more forthright, bullet point conversation. Other times he wants, some gentleness. So I think we have to understand what it is that we need from the other person. And I think for women, I think women coming out of divorce have a lot of anger and a lot of frustrations. And my hope is that, and there are definitely women that have been abused. And I'm not sure that the men in their life understand what that has looked like or wanted to look at that. But the flip side of that is that that we fell in love with that person, or we were in a relationship with that person for a reason. And I think it's really powerful to maintain a sense of love and respect, even if that was kind of a destructive relationship. And I don't know if I'm getting off point here, but I just think that really goes a long ways to moving forward and healing. And that was something I kept with me through my divorce, because mostly I wanted my children to still love and respect their father. So I encourage women to, get all the frustration out, process, but don't throw the whole relationship under the bus, because there's so much to learn from what happened.
Right. So that's a great point. Again, then on that self-awareness, right? So it goes back to the self-awareness of what what parts of you have masculine natures, what parts of you have feminine natures, because then knowing what that is with your with your spouse or with your ex or
Yeah.
with your future
Partner.
partners,
Yeah.
then you're better able to mitigate. Like you said, sometimes I need the softest, sometimes I need the stoicism, sometimes I need that masculine nature to take the lead and
Yeah.
and do that, and my feminine needs that. And so that then takes us to that second point. So what I'm hearing it break down to is that self-awareness, right?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
understanding that self-awareness and being aware, and then being able to then have those boundaries for what you need, express what you need, be aware of your feelings, state what your needs are. And then the third point is communicate them.
Yes. Yes.
Learn how to communicate them, because ultimately we're all looking for the same thing, which was, you said, we fell in love with this person, we have a loving relationship, we want to have a loving or harmonious relationship, but the way in which we go about it is different.
Yeah, I think those points are the perfect points. And I think that also what I like to work with people on a coaching level is it doesn't just happen overnight. It takes practice. You'll go in to have a communication and it goes sideways. And so it's just like really honing in on how to have those conversations, and definitely not layered with a bunch of emotion and anger is crucial. But I think that men really appreciate when women can come at that more, here's what it is, here's what it is, here's what it is, and not divert into all the layers of other things that have happened. And that really worked well for me and my ex, because then he was actually really hearing what I was saying.
Right. And the nonviolent communication is a beautiful way in which to, to do that, because it breaks it down very specific. And for men, like when I teach this to men, I said it's a structured, and I do this session, it's just a very structured 4-point way. Here's what you're going to do. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. And then the other person does it. And then you listen.
Yeah. And you might have to do it. You might have to say those 4 points over until the other person is really clicking in on, what you're saying. But yeah, that's a crucial piece. And it just doesn't, it takes practice. But doing that with your ex just sets you up to do that with a new partner and be more successful. So I know for some people that's not really an option. Their ex might have a mental health challenge that limits their ability to do that. And, that may not be an option for them, but then it's like learning boundaries to deal with, what arises within that relationship. So, but it all comes from awareness. Self-awareness is the key to the whole thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's still important if you do have somebody, and I can relate to that just doesn't get it, that for yourself to be able to go through that process and to be able to identify what you're feeling and state what your needs are and what you need and how you want to go forward is still healthy and beneficial to you. Even if it's not going to be heard, it's going to be able to let you know that, and let the other person know that this is where I'm at. Yeah. And so that's still a good thing.
Yeah. And I would just have to add one thing that I'm passionate about is when parents do this, their kids watch.
Yes.
And you are setting them up to be successful in relationships if you work on your stuff.
Yes.
And you work on the relationship like that. I feel that showed my daughter something very powerful about what it means to have boundaries, to own your path, and to make the changes that are needed.
Absolutely. And this is something that can be a healing process and a growing process for our children. And the program, the rebuilding program that I take men through has a component of it that we talk about. Oh, okay, this is what you're going through, and your children are also going through this to some extent and in some way. And this is how you can open the conversation around that. And I know that this has, I look at my divorce as a blessing, because it has allowed me the opportunity to have conversations with my daughters about this stuff that I would have never otherwise had.
Yeah.
And it has given them growth opportunities that they would have never experienced had they not go through this process. So for me, it's been a blessing, not only for myself, but for my daughters and for my relationship with our daughters, and going through this this specific process.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. So let's close on the one last note that you talked about, which is that time frame, like taking this time to get through it. To, the 2 years is about what, the same feeling that I have, that you need to take the time, first to do that assessment of yourself and understanding your behaviors. That is a tough one. It's like, so the rebuilding thing that I work through, it's like building blocks, you're going up. And that first part is that understanding your behaviors. And the second part is them learning, and like you mentioned, the self-worth and self-esteem and feeling good about that. And then that third part is learning to communicate towards better relationships, which becomes easier once you go up the building blocks. But those first ones in the beginning, that first year and a half, is just really challenging. But make sure to give yourself that permission to do that, because it's absolutely critical, and it's going to build for amazing future.
Yes, I look at awareness as like a fine wine. Like you just need a lot of time, to really get all the gifts of what that experience has taught you. And I'm several years out from my divorce, and I still feel like I'm learning. Acknowledging things about myself. And because I'm in another relationship, guess what? The same thing that I had, still there. It's like,
surprise, life's not going to let it go away.
No, it's like, these are my tendencies. It wasn't just the other person. So,
absolutely. Well, and that's the other great point. And maybe we can finish on that point, is that take the time to do it, because life's not going to let it go.
Yeah.
And it's not going to change unless you take the time to really understand it and make the change yourself. Because like you just said, you're going to get into another relationship and it's going to be similar things unless you've got an awareness around it. And if you do have an awareness around it, it will go to what I said, which is you're going to build this beautiful, amazing relationship like you have with your husband.
Yeah.
Like I hope to myself in the future.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a positive, and then we can prove to the rest of the world, and the ones, especially I get into it sometimes with some of the red pill MGTOW guys about like, well, it just doesn't make sense to do it. And it's like statistically, and I can't argue with any of that, because, and that's a conversation for a different show, the challenges, but I still believe in, the sanctity and the beauty and the positive parts and what marriage and being together in a healthy relationship can do for the world, for our family, etc. And so by going through this process, taking this, I think that I truly feel that we can do better in the world by working through this on ourselves and with somebody else.
Absolutely. And it's worth it. It's just worth it, because everybody's worth it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Sandra, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it. So I think the takeaway for us, if I can sum this up, and then I'll let you just agree, disagree, or add to it, but is that, we're all looking for the same thing. It's just how we get there is different. We do it differently. So I don't think maybe we've like come to any great realizations here. Maybe just clarify it a little bit more about how to do that, which is just identify what it is and what your part is in it, and then learn, to have that self-worth and the value and who you are, and then learn better how to communicate all of those things, and we can have a beautiful, harmonious world.
Yes. And, just get the right support.
Yeah.
Folks like you and I, we've been through it, we understand, and we do this because we know this is hugely empowering for men and women, and that changes the world. And so find the right people to help you. It's okay to ask for help.
Absolutely. And on that note, how can
Oh,
any women that are listening,
any
because I know
women.
there's some
Yeah.
women that are listening, or there's some
Yeah.
men that want their women to listen and
Yeah,
talk to you.
exactly.
How can we get a hold of you,
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
can we support you?
Yeah, you can get a hold of me at sandrawood.coach or sandra@sandrawood.coach, and reach out to me that way. I'm happy to set up a call and just chat with any women that are interested. And yeah, I love this partnership. Men and women need this process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
And everybody can always still get a hold of me at thedivorcedadvocate.com. Click on that, book a call, and let's talk about what you got going on. It's free. I think you've got that option too on your site too to book a
absolutely.
transformation
Yep.
session and just chat, and it's free. And a lot of times that's something that just gets breaks things loose for somebody to give themselves permission to go and make this change. Also, if you appreciated what we talked about today, please like the YouTube page here, subscribe, drop us a little note in the comments. If you're listening on the podcast, please do a review for us and help spread the word around the Divorced Advocate and the work that Sandra is doing. Sandra, I sincerely appreciate the work that you are doing with women. It helps everybody, like you said, to make a harmonious, happy, loving world out there.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Jude.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
All right.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.